to start, and I will do the briefest of introductions on this side, just to talk about why we're having this webinar, why we think it's valuable. But I'll let these guys introduce themselves thereafter, and we'll do a little agenda setting, and we'll get going. But first off, I just want to thank Jeff and Garrett for both being here and running this webinar. I think it's a great topic. I'll let Garrett introduce Finite Partners, but I'll just say that Trundl is an Atlassian solution partner. We found that some of the events that we did before COVID-19, a lot of folks were just curious about comparing these two products, and I just thought to spur this on, and I contacted Garrett, who runs a ServiceNow partner out of Raleigh-Durham. That's right, Garrett, right? Raleigh-Durham.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we just, both of these companies have the same culture, very customer focused. We're just excited to kind of do deep dives into this topic. I'll let Garrett introduce himself, and then Jeff, and then I'll kick off the next couple slides for the agenda setting, and then we'll get going.
Certainly. Here at Finite Partners, we're a small but mighty crew of a little under 10 people. We've got a number of experts that have been working with ServiceNow, and I've been working with ServiceNow for 10 years. We have over 5 years each, and we're excited to be here to help answer your guys' questions today. Platform is for ServiceNow. We help develop products that go into the ServiceNow store as help people implement their ServiceNow to regular ITSM stuff.
Hey, Garrett, just letting you know the voice quality from your side is a little bit lower, than the very high quality we got from the first time we did this webinar. So if there's anything on your end, you can tweak. I just want to make sure your message gets across. But also, I would say that anybody who wants to follow up with Garrett after this, I'm sure there'll be beautiful phone quality after. So just Garrett letting you know, maybe I'm the only one who's hearing it, but y'all let me know if you're hearing something different.
Yeah, it's a little broken up.
Okay, cool. Jeff, why don't you go ahead, and we'll see if
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Jeff Pittman. I really cut my teeth in the technology industry, coming up through the ranks in project and portfolio management, and was a reluctant de facto Jira administrator as I learned to adopt those tools at an enterprise level to really just get my job done. And as, of course, ITSM and ITIL started to take shape and the industry trends, taking all of that and then parlaying it into becoming a solution partner a little over a year and a half ago, full-time to do Atlassian and deployments. And inside of that, mentions is a little there in the bio, but we work with moderately sized companies all the way up to very large enterprises doing highly transformative deployments of the software or improving what you already got. And really what we continually do at my level on the solution architecture side is we're going to continually float what's possible, how to get there, and then best practices in terms of keeping it really binary because everybody's different. Every company is a little bit different, and how do you fit these things into your very unique organization generally? So that's my world and my role and background.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right. Awesome. So the agenda is we did our introductions. I'm going to briefly cover the who, what, why of this webinar. I've already actually started planting those seeds already. But the general structure is we've picked 14 points to comparison or to do a comparison of these two tools. It's basically going to be a punch for punch, a minute and a half of these guys just kind of trying to clarify or distill the understanding of each of those 14 points. We've got a few fun comparisons, and ultimately, what the idea is that we're here to help. This is what we do for a living. So we're going to have an open Q&A if there's time afterwards, and obviously give you guys contact information if you guys want to just ask more. If there's something we don't cover, we are fairly open to being interrupted, but when we do want to get through these 14 points of, and so if there's something that you feel like we can answer pretty quickly, go ahead and interrupt us. Okay, sound good? Okay. Awesome. So why are we having this webinar? Choosing an ITSM solution, particularly at the enterprise level, is a very hard thing to do. There's a lot of impacts, a lot of considerations on features, scalability, adaptability, security, deployment model, and of course costs. So the idea is that you should be able to play chess here without the fog. So we want to clear the air. We can't promise that we're going to do it all in 1 hour, but we want to be able to get that started, because the worst thing is everybody wasting time trying to do their own research. The idea is that you have the people here to be able to take what would be a lot of your bandwidth to do this research and to make the right decisions. And you have folks here, Garrett and Jeff and the two companies, to make that an easier decision, a more clear decision. There's a lot of areas these tools overlap, but also there's a lot of parts in the consideration that it makes one tool just more clear, a better fit for your use case. So when we can get you to a point where you have enough knowledge and it becomes a clear decision, that's a big win for both of our companies to do that for you for whatever you choose. Okay. Awesome. So a quick look at Forrester's and why we're talking about these tools and where they fit. ServiceNow is, we're guessing, about 7,000, 10,000 customers today. They're in 80% of the Fortune 500 companies. It's really the industry leader for IT service management solution, kind of the Ferrari, as you might say. It's a platform as a service enterprise ITSM solution. Really, well, these guys will go into the DNA of these tools. But Atlassian's a little bit different. They are strategically a very strong company because they have their fingers in a lot of parts of enterprise or a business collaboration. Jeff will go over where Jira comes from and things like that, but they have 230, 250 or so thousand customers today. We're guessing maybe 40 to 70K of them are Jira Service Desk customers to enable ITSM or just business service management capabilities within a easy portal. So they are equally ubiquitous in Fortune 500 companies. And I don't think I need to cover the rest of the bullets, but that's where we are. So at this point, what we're going to do is we are going to start covering these 14 points, and I'll let Garrett start off with DNA.
All right. Can you guys hear me better now?
I think so.
Yep.
All right, excellent. I'll switch some headsets here. All right, well, I'm starting my clock now then. So the ServiceNow's DNA and where it came from, it's important to understand that they started with a workflow engine. That was kind of their key. They're like, you know what, we want to help take business processes and create some workflows around them to automatically be able to send out tasks and approvals to people at the proper time. From there, they're like, hey, you know what, we need to actually do something with this. And they built Service Catalog was the next big thing they built. So for people to be able to go in, employees to be able to say, hey, you know, I need this particular thing, you know, I need this mouse, or I need this, you know, access to the building, things like that. And from there, they then, the next thing they built, all within just the first few years, was IT support management. And that really came down to everything to do with ITSM. So incident, problem, change, all that kind of stuff, CMDB is really where they got their start. From there, they've spread out quite a bit, as we'll continue to talk as we go through this. But that is really what the core of theirs was starting with that workflow request in ITSM.
It's Jeff, and on the Jira Service Desk side, really the background in the DNA was Jira starting as a bug tracking tool around 2004, and really started getting highly adopted around 2006. In fact, I was one of those early adopters. But eventually what it turned out is that about 40% of Jira customers were using Jira software for IT service management. You know, custom filters and sort of building their own feature set out in order to leverage that as an ITSM tool. So about 2013, 2012, 2013 time range, Jira Service Desk was born with certain features that are built on the exact same architecture as Jira. So the workflows are the same, and building out screen schemes and data schemes are all the same, but it enhanced a feature set that included request types and other enhanced workflows, SLAs, and reporting that was going to be specifically important for IT service management. And then, of course, it all lives under the Jira and Atlassian architecture, so you can have a fully integrated footprint when it comes to your Atlassian platform and not have to hop from one system to the other to do ITSM versus software development. In fact, it's a very popular business case these days to have an ITSM front end that then farms out work for the development teams wherever needed and keep all of that under one umbrella of an ecosystem.
All right, for the product approach of ServiceNow, some of the key things to pay attention here are they strive to be a single pane of glass. So their intent is not necessarily to tool you have within your company, but they do want to be the single place of engagement for your employees if possible. So your this tool, ServiceNow, will help reach. That said, there is a lot of ServiceNow across the entire enterprise, and they're going to work with you. If you don't have a tool to replace something else, they'll probably eventually get there. So something to keep in mind, they have the core platform, and that's everything you can see there. So all these key areas they have: security, customer service, IT, have apps within ServiceNow to help take care of all of these. But in addition, the Scoped App Marketplace that you can easily go get, apps to help take looking for. They can be very specific and industry driven, such as specifically for power companies. And the question when it comes to ServiceNow, whether you can do it. This is how configurable ServiceNow is. It's not can you do it, but should you. Certainly on some platforms, you can configure it to do whatever you're looking for. You can completely change the feel of things. You can add on completely new technologies, whatever it is you're looking to do. You should, whether that's going to be the best for your money and the best bang for your buck.
All right. Thanks, Garrett. Hey, Garrett, we may have a little more audio issues on your end. I don't know if it's a bandwidth thing.
Okay. I'll continue working on that. And if you guys need a couple and then come back to me.
Sure.
So on the product approach on the Atlassian Jira Service Desk side, all of this was originally put in with a heart of DIY, and which that's the good and the bad news on how highly configurable it actually is and accessible it is. However, along with that, there was part of the reason the Solution Partner Network was created in order to help you determine exactly where those configurations need to go and how they can take you, and particularly at an enterprise level, to start organizing those configs. Also, the Atlassian community was built out to do bolt-on. So if you think of this as it's a very modular deployment in terms of exactly what you need out of the Atlassian marketplace to enable different use cases. So what we encourage is having that solution architecture level approach, utilizing what we call different add-ons that are in concert, and then you take what we call a land and expand approach to continually improve your solution as you continue to grow and learn and expand through the enterprise. But ultimately, it was also designed for a very rapid deployment. Along with that, we encourage getting that V1 out the door. And then again, as you learn from your customers and learn as an organization of how you want to dial your processes, that's exactly why it was built to be as configurable and modular as it was, so that you can not only rapidly deploy, but then rapidly take a shift, whether it's a market shift or whether it's a compliance shift, some things that may be out of our control. We can generally get those changes made very, very quickly. So that's really the approach that we like to take. And then the Atlassian marketplace is to put those things in concert for what you need specifically for your organization.
All right, Garrett, we're going to give it another shot, bud.
All right, I'm going to speak on Jennifer's computer here. How's this sound?
Beautiful, I think.
All right. Well, we'll see how it goes. All right. I don't know how much everybody heard about the other stuff, but I'm just going to keep going forward. We can always come back and talk about the other bullet points later if we have time. So under self-service, some of the key things to understand is they have what they call a service portal. That's the diagram, the image you see on screen here. This is the end user facing, your customer facing, your employee facing interface that is not for the people that actually work on the tool. So this is the self-service where people can come in here and help request things on their own, look up knowledge, answer their own questions. There is an entire specific service portal like this because you can have multiple of them. And there's one that's very specific for HR. So your onboarding and your offboarding and requesting PTO, looking at, you know, what their leaves policy is and all that kind of stuff. You can do all within the self-service portal here. And it is, again, very configurable. This is built on Angular, and you can do pretty much anything you're looking to with this. The look and feel here can be obviously completely changed to do whatever it is they're looking for. Each little thing in here would be called a widget. And again, like I said, they're built in Angular. And you have the ability to use what's called virtual agents within the chat window and things that can be as a part of the service portal to easily allow people to communicate over chat and simply get all their requests and things taken care of and filed through that method.
Yeah, it was much better audio.
Thanks.
Yeah. So on the self-service side for Jira Service Desk, really it kind of ties back to the DNA too of how this build was really put together. But it's all about deflection under the best practice. And so 91% of customers would really rather self-serve if they can with the right amount of intuitive instruction, maybe videos or a good reference document rather than having to go through the process of the ticket. So what Jira Service Desk was designed to do in concert with Confluence is to build those knowledge-based articles with very robust content that you can face your customers with in a very seamless process based on what's called smart search. But then along with that on the back end, how do you know whether or not deflection is working? So out of the box, there is a great set of measurements that are really directed at deflection and self-service, and what is the efficacy of your articles? Are they working? Are they even being read? And then you can start dialing in on this very, very important metric that is a best practice and provides a best-in-class user experience for you and your organization.
All right, incident and problem. ServiceNow has a very robust incident and problem modules that tie directly into the CMDB, which is kind of the heart of everything. So you can easily say that this particular issue is occurring on this particular router, server, whatever that might need to be. You can easily create a problem from one or more different incidents and have those all linked together. You can easily communicate out workarounds and issues about the problem out to those incidents. You can help resolve them that way. So there's a lot of interplay and coordination between the incident and problem records. You can do automatic assignment based on artificial intelligence if you want, or just based on rules that you put together to automatically assign the incidents out to anybody. You can easily search through the existing knowledge base. Simply by typing in the incident short description, it will automatically go ahead and search through the knowledge base and try to help deflect incidents, try to help mitigate the number of incidents that come in by allowing the person to easily see relevant knowledge articles that are right there in front of them. You can easily create knowledge articles from problem or incidents just by having a checkbox to say, hey, you know what? Once this problem is taken care of, we should go ahead and create a knowledge article to kind of explain the known issues around this. You can do something called on-call rotation. So you can easily, depending on the time of day and the day of the week, you can have different people on call who have different pagers or whatnot that are going to be called for a P1 incident automatically in the afternoon. You can do incident tasks. You can do major incidents. You can do child incidents. So all depending on however your company works best with the framework and the process that you guys have, you can easily implement that into the incident and problem management within ServiceNow. And finally, you can easily relate changes and affected CIs. So like I said, CMDB, the different servers and routers and tracking those is at the core of ServiceNow and easily used from all the different modules. And that is definitely something you can do. Additionally, if you have changes that have occurred, you can say, hey, you know what, this incident occurred because that change from last night wasn't properly tested or didn't go through okay. And on the flip side, you can say, and the change that we're putting in tomorrow night is actually going to solve this particular problem for us.
Quick question, Garrett. For the incident side of things, is where does, with the native sort of ITSM suite or module that you choose for ServiceNow, where do monitoring capabilities fit into that? Are they baked in as complex as those can be? Or is there a supplemental cost for the monitoring / alerting type of capabilities on incident management?
Yeah, so you're talking more around, I think they would call it, ITOM, ITOM over in ServiceNow,
Yeah.
so IT operations management, and that's going to be typically a different cost, a different licensing structure, and that monitoring is often, they don't focus as much on monitoring as they do discovering all the different at CIs and things like that automatically, but they do have event management and alert management that works well with things like SolarWinds, et cetera. Again, all those integrations are there. So it is a different cost. It is a licensing structure. It's based upon typically at that point the number of events and alerts that you're going to be processing. But they do have all of that. And then those alerts that help create it, I believe it's alerts create the events and the events create the incidents, and they have all of that kind of filtering built into the system. But
Okay.
that would be a different module that would be optional that you could add on with a different cost.
Okay, cool. I have a slide later in this presentation where I have not approved with you, and I want to try to help everybody who's listening here to kind of figure out where this all fits. So we'll find out later if I got it right, and you can cross-check me on it, just try to understand how that works. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
No problem. So on the incident problem management side, out of the box, it comes with a set of ITIL certified workflows and issue types that you can, again, tie this back to rapid deployment and then adjust the configurations for your particular nuances. Along with that, though, the ability to link certain issues together that then aggregate into certain problems and, again, keep them all tightly integrated together for really what it comes down to is running metrics. Are we getting better at these incidents? Are we reducing these by implementing our problem management processes? And then, of course, along with that, on the cloud premium, or you can build in certain automations that are based on certain ticket type, based on the location, even the customers that may need special attention or certain products, and really dialing in both a combination of the user experience to get exactly what you need in order to get that incident or problem to the right team. But then really the sky's the limit on how you want to enforce that workflow, how you might want to automate that workflow, and who you may want to bring into the fold as it relates to incident and problem management. But one of the biggest keys here is that ITIL certified setup right out of the gate, if that's something your organization's looking to mature to.
Awesome. All right, configuration management, gentlemen.
Well, I think I've mentioned this one a couple times so far, but in case I was breaking up at the time, for configuration management, tracking all the different pieces of hardware within your company is definitely something that, like I said, plays into all the different modules that ServiceNow offers, even down to for HR, hey, you know what, we have this laptop assigned to this individual, and it's a part of the onboarding workflow to help be able to give them that laptop. So even things that may not be directly related to things with hardware definitely have the ability to plug into, CMDB and or Asset, which is slightly different module and that tracks more about the financial aspects and the things that you physically own, whereas CMDB is about logging incidents and problems and things that are broken against these particular pieces of hardware. It is core to the entire platform. You have different things that function against this that are kind of key tenets of it that are additional costs. So CMDB is there pretty much no matter what module you get. But if you want to use discovery, which is the automatic discovery through the network of all the different routers and switches, et cetera, then that's often done on a per physical device license basis. Orchestration, so going out and actually updating and applying patches and configuring those things automatically from the ServiceNow instance, and service mapping, which is the art of automatically relating everything together under a particular service so that you can say, hey, you know what, email is down for all of our customers because that switch over in data center 3 is down, and that affects the email service. So that's kind of what the service mapping stuff does. So they do have all those are separate costs and separate licenses, but they're all there and they are very powerful. And there's just a robust relationship model that between all of these things, you can say, hey, you know what, these are all tied together. This is how they affect each other, et cetera. And as we just mentioned, they do have alert and event management that ties into things like SolarWinds, et cetera, as well as then you can do proposed changes to say, hey, you know what, we're going to update the RAM in server 5. So we're going to do that, during the change window on Friday. So you put in the kind of that data as a proposed change, and then once the change is done, you can actually update the data automatically in the system. And finally, they have some really powerful health reports and completeness metrics. There's an excellent portal, like little page that you can pull up that's there by default that tells you, hey, you know what, based on how you've got everything set up in your CMDB and what you've said is important to track for you, you have 75% of all the data completed in the CMDB of all the different things that you've discovered through your organization. So there's some good metrics to be able to say how much and how accurate your data is.
Great.
Okay, on the Jira and the Atlassian side, really, so the CMDB itself is not a core feature or a core module of Jira Service Desk or the Atlassian products. But again, just back to the product DNA and of course their approach, it's bolt on what you need. But the good news is too, there's also a way, again, to land and expand as you mature your organization into the space of configuration and device management. Depending on the size of your organization and the level of detail that you need, or the actual size of your organization, there's recommended add-ons for Device 42 and Insight. Both have very different price points and very different levels of features, but that would, again, would just be back to the Atlassian approach of build to suit and then build to mature and create those plugins as needed with those these types of systems.
All right, knowledge management. ServiceNow has the ability to have different knowledge bases, as they call them, for different audiences. So if you want to have a knowledge base just for your internal IT folk, a different knowledge base for just your internal HR agents, and a knowledge base that all of your employees or even customers, if you're doing customer service management, all your customers are going to be able to view, you can have these different knowledge bases and have then different approval workflows for each one of them. So if your internal IT folks say, you know what, nobody needs to approve our article, it's just the moment that it's ready, put it up there so we can all get that knowledge as fast as possible, they can do that. Whereas on the flip side, if something is going out from HR to all the employees of the company, maybe that needs to go through several rounds of approval, and you can easily set that up using the workflow engine. On the flip side, you also can do the same thing for retiring articles. So before somebody can just say, hey, you know what, we're done with this article, you can require that that go through approval, or you can say that it instantly comes off. It all depends on what needs to work best for that knowledge base within your company. You can have you can have rating and feedback directly on the articles. This goes back to the self-service concept. People are easily able to go in and look at all the knowledge articles themselves, try to help answer their own questions before they submit an incident, and they can easily rate and provide feedback to say, hey, you know what, this was helpful, this was not helpful, this was 4 stars. They can do all of that directly on the articles as they look at them. A few other things, because there's more to talk about than I have time for. They have multi-language support for everything in the ServiceNow platform, but especially for the knowledge base. They have knowledge base level security to control who can see things, like I've talked about with the different knowledge bases, but you can also do that on the article level. So within it, say something that all the employees can see, you could limit that down to say, hey, you know what, only employees from maybe this sub company that we own are able to see this. Additionally, you can then have versions of articles. So while one's published, you could be working on another one and putting that through the different approval workflows as necessary and getting that edited. You can have a wiki style of knowledge base or an HTML style, which is more the standard. You can import a knowledge article from a Word document, and you can automatically refresh or have retire dates, etc. So that you can automatically make these things say, hey, you know what, this content is stale, we need to refresh it, and have that automatically go into somebody's queue. So lots of power and things behind how the knowledge articles can work and what's there. And again, this all goes back into the incident deflection and things like that, of it saying, let's make sure that these knowledge articles are automatically seen and showing up at the places where they're the most helpful.
Well, in the Atlassian ecosystem, Confluence is, of course, the core software for creating knowledge management and knowledge article content. And this, whether from an IT service management perspective, similar features where you can change permissions to make article access anonymous or publicly available versus internal only, so you can get that logical and physical segregation of the type of information you want published versus the type of information that is really team specific for increasing internal knowledge outside of educating your customers. Along with that, of course, it immediately integrates between Confluence and Jira, so you can go cross-project, cross-incident, cross-issue even. And then within a service request, and we kind of tie this back, as that's being worked, the knowledge article can actually start getting created based on the content of the ticket, and this can all be in the hands of the agents. And then really, where do you want to focus your time and attention? How are you going to measure the efficacy of those articles? And getting the ability as well to not only have those render in real time, but in a lot of cases, you can actually send the article directly to the customer and attach it in the comments as you go. But from a permissions and a page and file versioning perspective, connecting your directory to it, or just even document repository, that's really all the same core, very similar core features. But again, the biggest advantage is that instant integration, of course, with your entire Atlassian stack.
Metrics and reporting. In ServiceNow, the goal is for people to be able to build their own reports, to not have to have an admin create them for them. So there was a reporting tools in the platform that anybody can use to easily put together reports. Now these get so easy to use that you can be looking at your list of things that are assigned to you. You can right click at the top and say, show me a bar graph, show me a pie chart, and it'll take you over to that pie chart. You can put together dashboards for different audiences to be able to see with reports that are either baked into the system, because there are hundreds of canned reports and KPIs already in there, or ones that you go ahead and create for a wider audience. People can create reports for specific groups, for themselves, however that may be. You can have metrics, SLAs, and OLAs on any different record in the system to be able to track whatever it is you're looking for, whether it be aging or whether it be how long something is in a particular state or anything like that. You can easily do database views, basically combining two tables together in order to mix the data in order to get the specific statistics you're looking for. You can export everything to PDF, Excel, etc. All reports are interactive, so if you click on one of those little bars and that icon you see, it's going to take you to the specific data that made up that particular part of that bar. They also have then something called performance analytics. So this is great reporting tools that are right here that you're seeing that everybody can use. And then if you need something that is how to say that? They're snapshots of data. So if you need something that's, hey, you know what? I need to know exactly how many instances were open at 2 p.m. last Wednesday. If you use something called performance analytics, you have that ability to easily be able to see that particular information on those snapshots and compare, say, last Wednesday to the Wednesday before that to this Wednesday to see what the data was like at that time. There's also predictive intelligence to be able to see what the AI-driven reports that automatically put together the reports and some key intelligence and data for you. And you can have auto escalations on those metrics and SLAs that we were talking about. So you can automatically notify the manager or the VP or whoever it is to let them know that you're breaching SLAs.
Cool. All right, on the Jira Service Desk side, one of the most important features is that just right out of the gate, based on some of the existing configs, you have out-of-box reports such as created and resolved. You can start doing trending and analysis of seeing things how they're starting to lay out over time. But then those immediate SLA metrics too that are related to time to resolution, met versus breached, and then having those SLAs is really an actionable piece of data so that you can stay on task or get some predictability on SLAs that may breach and what the actions that the system needs to take, or in some cases, custom notifications. Along with that, you can then build out as many custom reports as you need to. One of the biggest advantages to Jira is just the ability to very simply get to the data with either a simple Jira query language or building out custom filters that you can then choose a rendering for, such as a line graph or bar graphs or the various options that are there. But then as you expand into those kinds of measures that you're looking for, there are BI tools that in a lot of cases we see people export their data and import it into something else, but there are BI tools such as EasyBI, who we're partners with, that it is a BI instance exactly designed for Jira with just about an infinite number of measures that you can think of, so you can truly start to visualize and, as we like to say, tell the story of how things are going. That's one of the most important measures that you can start providing those types of insights on behaviors, customer behavior, agent behavior, speed, and accuracy.
Awesome.
All right, we've talked a lot about ServiceNow and exactly what it contains and what's there. But how about actually deploying it? What's that look like? What's the process like? Well, first off, to understand, ServiceNow is cloud-based. That is the primary option. That is really how the vast majority of customers are going to have it. It's going to be hosted in ServiceNow data centers. It's going to be hosted by them in a cloud-based architecture, and you're just going to go to the web address. Typically, it's going to be something like yourcompany.service-now.com. Now, you do have the option to put your own URL or domain on there, so even if you want to do that, you can. There are other options, though. You can have what's called an on-premise instance, which is self-hosted by you on your hardware within your company. Typically, that is going to be a more complex option that is not recommended. It's a very specific skill set to be able to set those up and keep that running. And even large companies that I've seen have done it, they try to stay away from it, or they try to go cloud-hosted whenever possible. The FedRAMP is, if you know that acronym, they do have FedRAMP servers that meet those classifications, and they also have something called edge encryption. So the FedRAMP, you're going to be looking for federal type of situations, and the edge encryption is something that you can encrypt essentially everything in the instance, or all the key things in the instance that you choose that you want to encrypt. And the only way that that's visible is by going to a particular proxy. And so essentially everything's encrypted, and it's only decrypted when it comes to a particular proxy that you set up within your particular company on your hardware. So even if it's cloud hosted, you can set up that encryption so that nobody can see the data, and you can be assured that it is safe.
Garrett, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
So the other part of deployment is can you deploy ServiceNow by yourself?
Yes and no. It depends. I would recommend having a ServiceNow developer or expert who's done it for a couple years on staff if you're going to do it by yourself and you're not going to bring in a partner. ServiceNow does have professional services that they can help deploy and set it up for you. The ServiceNow is a very complex platform. It has a lot of no-code and low-code options that you can easily develop and do things yourself. But unless you've had at least some training or aspect in it, I definitely recommend at least having somebody to help consult and tell you about, hey, look, these are probably your best options. Can you turn it on and use it entirely out of box? Yes, you certainly could. And if you have absolutely no processes at your organization, then maybe that's something that you could do. But most of the time, people are going to want at least a consultant to come in to help tell them, hey, you know what, this is kind of some of the standard options, et cetera. ServiceNow is trying to get it there. And you'll see as some of their, when you go to turn it on, it walks you like through this whole setup process for each individual module. So they're trying to get it there, but it's still right now, it requires a little bit of elbow grease.
Yeah, and I think it's just important for distinction for good or bad and understanding where ServiceNow is in the marketplace. That makes sense. But certainly it's a different approach that Atlassian takes for deployment. So yeah, I'll let Jeff jump into that one.
Yeah, so pretty similar. There's a cloud and cloud premium now, which really just enhances some features that you could enable either with an add-on or get some advanced analytics, things like that with Atlassian Cloud Premium. You can then, of course, self-host on a server, or just depending on the size of your organization and where you want to take this, there is a data center option. Really, the biggest key there is kind of agnostic of deployment. If you do go cloud, it gets a few things off the table, right? Server purchases and access and all those fun things. But anywhere from around 4.5 to 6 weeks, 6 to 8, maybe for some of the more complex ones. That's about our average for getting Jira Service Desk stood up. If it's a DIY and you keep it very simple and out of the box, with a handful of configurations, that can actually be faster than that. And that's where we again encourage that land and expand in the DNA. But along with the cloud, of course, the security offerings are there. I can get you some details, but whether it's data encryption in transit or at rest, and engaging in a single sign-on, or enforcing two-factor authentication, those kinds of options, of course, are there as well, even on the cloud side. So just depending on what your own personal requirements are, there's a deployment for you.
And also add to the distinction with Atlassian has no deployment consultants.
None.
Oh, none. They are white glove. So that's where a solution partner has the opportunity to say, we've done this 100 times before. We know the best practices. We can help you do that. But also Atlassian, just the same for their customers, encourages the DIY model with the robust, community out there of sharing ideas and documentation and things like that. So it's a little bit more of the Wild West, but you get to be who you want to be on that one to deploy it. So it's go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, just to add some color along with that is really where the solution partners come in, and where we're used the most is kind of put us on your hip, and we'll help you guide and organize. And as Patrick stated, we see a lot of the use cases, enterprise level, just starting out, et cetera, where we can offer ideas on things that we've seen work, things that we've seen not work. But really, it's about how do you configure all this at an enterprise level, and that's a very big distinction between DIY versus enterprise level type of configurations that roll everything up to the leadership, et cetera. So just depending on where you are and where you want to go, how many teams are on it, and then, of course, what's going to be really important to you from getting the data out of your system would also help drive a deployment decision.
Great, thanks, Jeff.
Thing to speak to there, because I know a lot of people do care about like how much time do each of these take, et cetera. So I do think it's worth saying for the deployment that ServiceNow, I have seen it done in 1 to 2 months for a very small organization. Small as being the smallest I typically see ServiceNow be deployed at. But larger companies, if you're talking, multinational banks, you're talking huge entertainment companies, et cetera, those ones I've easily seen take 6 to 12 months, 12 to 18 months, are not uncommon to get ServiceNow set up the way that they're looking for. Though we also, in ServiceNow, at least our company always recommends land and expand. Like, often is good in Jira, pick something, get it done well, and then start using future releases within your company to go ahead and start rolling out more features. But yeah, typically you're going to look to see probably 2 months is at the minimum of what you're looking at to set up ServiceNow. And one key thing there, I think, to understand the two differences between these is ServiceNow, yes, it has lots of different modules that tries to embrace every different part of your organization, but it's also, we saw the number of customers, ServiceNow, 7,000 some, right? And Jira Service Desk, 140,000 plus, but yet both are in 80% of the Fortune 500. That's your key. ServiceNow is often an enterprise level tool. It is typically towards much larger companies. The minimum that you're going to see pricing wise for ServiceNow is probably around $50K a year minimum to get in the door. So you don't often see people just saying, hey, you know what, we're going to do this ourselves, because at that point, this is going to save often, say, large multinational banks. They're like, we're going to implement ServiceNow for the next 2 years because it's going to save us $5 billion. At that point, they're going to bring in a whole fleet of consultants to help them set this up. So that's a good thing to kind of understand the context of these two tools.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the licensing side, I guess the average for a Jira Service Desk implementation, per year might be 10 to 25K. Maybe it just really depends. And maybe even less than that.
Yeah, the care and feeding component is something to consider based on your size as well.
Yeah, and I say 50K is the minimum, but for context, I've never seen anybody that was under around 200 or less. It's almost always in the millions with people that I'm talking about, because again, enterprise level customers.
Yeah.
Okay, I know it said thanks. I know I took up some extra time there.
Yeah. We could, unless you got a lot to say, we can accelerate. We do want to let people ask questions if they have them. I guess we'll kind of run a little faster if we can.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I'll go much faster through this stuff. Security, there's lots to talk about. If security is important to you, you're welcome to reach out and ask specific questions after the fact. There's all sorts of levels of security. You can fine tune it however you want in ServiceNow. Yes, there's SSO capabilities, two-factor authentication. You can do essentially anything that you need to there. It's definitely going to be possible. And if on the flip side, your security needs a place to put in their incidents for security incidents and vulnerability and things like that, you can do that within ServiceNow with another module as well.
Cool. Yeah, on the security side, yeah, really kind of feature for feature, very, very similar, of course, due to all US-based or actually international compliance for ACLs. But the ability to organize folks into different roles and groups really can control whether or not certain content or even all the way down to certain fields are going to be visible, which become really important as you expand through the organization. to be able to have simple security roles and groups that for certain types of content. So as you can imagine, you expand into finance, vendor management, HR, legal, or even security. Making sure that you can put those controls on easily is really the key. It's a very simple configuration to organize who can see what. You can get really, really granular if you want, all the way down at the field level, whether or not it's visible to a certain group or a certain set of agents. But really one of the most important ones is enforcing a workflow that only a certain person with a certain role can say advance something to done in a certain case, or submit a root cause analysis, or whatever those permissions are that you want to just ensure compliance and behaviors that can all be locked down. And then we mentioned a little bit back on the kind of deployment with the security offerings, but of course SSO and data encryption at rest and in transit, all standard features. And then if you integrate like a mobile component, if you're on Jira Cloud, mobile component is something that you can bolt on. There is a server version as well, but again, similar types of security parameters apply. And then of course you can enable two-factor authentication, which is also a trending use case.
Awesome. We do have one question, maybe before we get into the integrations. One question is from Hemant. And I guess maybe we can sum up this at the end. You can have it percolate, Garrett and Jeff. But he wants to just hear kind of the case as to why ServiceNow commands the prices it does as a differentiation. We've alluded to the size, enterprise size, complexity. I think there's things we could get into for the value of a single pane of glass and that you've talked about. But Hemant, and maybe we can cover it even offline too. He's just saying, what would you say are those top things that really differentiate it, that bring about the logic behind the price difference? And so that question is there.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we could probably talk all day about it, trying to figure it out to some extent. I think part of it is just who they're targeting. Sometimes you set your price in order to narrow your clientele down, and sometimes your clientele comes about and dictates your price. I don't know what came first at ServiceNow, but I think part of it is that they don't frankly want to spend time with small businesses. They're going after only the large accounts. So just keep that in mind. That's part of it. As far as why is it worth that cost? It's a level of configurability that you can have. Like I said, it really is possible, and almost anything you can do within this platform, to the extent that you could just create and run a outside commercial website on it if you really wanted to. I'm not saying anybody do it, but it would hypothetically be possible. And the level of interplay between the different modules and everything that's there. So, right, the ability that your incident, your problem, your CMDB, then your HR, your IT department, your security department, everything is tied in together. And when one thing happens, you can trigger off something to happen in the other. And I think that would be argued by some of the larger customers that I've worked with. One of the main things that they really are focused on. And then I think probably some of the, I'd say stability and stuff, but I can't speak to Jira. I'm not sure they're just as stable as that goes. I would imagine some of the language features and translations and things you can do along those lines are probably something that's very highly sought after for these international companies as well. So those are just some of the things, but I'm sure we could fill out multiple blog articles trying to talk about and analyze what those reasons are.
Well, yeah, and based off of this webinar, sorry, I'm gonna probably interrupt. Just edit. The team here is gonna be trying to work on a long-lived, maybe 5,000, 7,000 word asset that will try to compare these two products out there. Jira, Atlassian has all their prices out there for everyone to see. ServiceNow, it's more of a black box, and you have to go off of anecdotes on some things and things like that, and obviously tools like for like. And we'll have a slide a little bit later where I try to attempt to put it together. But it's for everybody who's registered for this webinar, I'll be sharing that asset with everyone, so maybe a little bit more in black and white to help you with your consideration as well. I'm trying to percolate a lot of ideas to help people make this decision. So there'll be more to share with you guys later, whether it comes a week or 2 or 3 weeks from now.
And one simple one too, I think, along with pricing too, is if you think of the scope of the target user for ServiceNow, and then you look at the relative volume, Atlassian opened up the scope of the target user to really be anybody, and the price point was set accordingly. And then along with that, they offsetted a lot of costs by not building certain modules that ServiceNow invested in directly. So they've got to recover some of that. And I don't mean that as a knock, but that's just part of it, where that Atlassian community was born in order to build on all of those modular pieces and components, because every company is different. This is DIY at the core. So we want that price point to be that initial out of the gate. But if you really think of the scope of the target user of Atlassian versus ServiceNow, that's going to directly correlate to the pricing model that you see.
Awesome.
Well said. All right, integrations. Speeding through this, if there's a style of integration that you need to do, ServiceNow is going to be able to support it, right? SOAP, REST, LDAP, JDBC, GraphQL. If it's out there, more than likely they support it at this point. They have something called the Integration Hub, which is like their new version 2.0 way to handle integrations, but all the standard stuff is there. And the Integration Hub really does introduce some no-code, low-code options, attempting to even reach the level of like Zapier and things like that. That's their vision of being able to drop these things into there. There's a mid server that can sit within your network that helps reach out to the cloud, so you don't have to open any firewall or any ports or anything like that within your firewall, and yet you can still get data from your internal systems up to the ServiceNow cloud in a secure and encrypted manner. Plenty of other things, like we said, you can export everything to Excel or CSV. There's JSON, XML capabilities. You can write your own scripted REST APIs. It handles FTP, SFTP, FTPS, and there's plenty of different things called import sets and transform maps. So you don't have to have the data perfect when you go to load it in ServiceNow. You can easily transform it once it's up in the tool.
Man, you rattled off those acronyms like a champ. Unbelievable. That was awesome. So on integrations, there's actually another graphic that we showed a little bit earlier, but really, I don't think we've come across a use case yet that Jira can't integrate with. What most people understand in the tech community, that Atlassian being as popular as it is, that if you do have an application out there, you're going to have to build a plugin, or you're going to have to build some way to communicate. If you haven't already, they're going to ask for it because of how popular it is. With 85% of the Fortune 500 having it. If you don't, you're going to be missing the boat. So. Out-of-box integrations, of course, or anything within the Atlassian ecosystem. Here's what we've also learned is that when Atlassian catches on to, say, an add-on or something that's trending, of course, they do an acquisition where then it becomes a standard feature and, of course, a part of the default integration with the Atlassian ecosystem. Integrating, whether it's an add-on or a plug-in to speak to something, say, like a Salesforce is a very common one, or an external CMDB or an external content management system, whatever the case is. But really the true power there is inside of the APIs, where you can do pushes and fetches to your heart's content of how you want things to go. That may tie back to deployment, something to keep in mind, just depending on what your speed and performance recommendation or needs are there. Just things to consider about how much load you're going to put on your system and what you're actually wanting to integrate with. But very robust, very capable, and I don't think we've run into one yet where there's not a plugin available to the Atlassian community based on the popularity of the tool.
I think you've pretty much covered enterprise scaling, right, Garrett?
I have. The one thing I'll say, enterprise scaling, workflows, and automation, these are the bread and butter of ServiceNow. These are why it's going to be cost a lot, et cetera. The one other thing I'll say about enterprise I haven't said before is if you are a managed service provider, if you want people to be able to come into your instance and see their own data and see only their own data, say if I ran one for airlines, American Airlines and Delta and United, they could all log into the instance. They would see their own logo, could be white labeled. They could see just their data. That's another big, powerful enterprise scaling possibility of ServiceNow. But beyond that, we've already talked about everything else here.
Yeah, similar. And we talked a lot about it where you land and expand. Here's what you're going to find as you start to delve in and get your Atlassian deployment rolling, even if it's on a team of 5. And I think that's one of the other differentiators with the target there and the price point. But being able to scale at enterprise, what's going to happen is somebody's going to see it and they're going to say, I want one of those too, or I'd like to get my team on there. Well, how do you do that without, here's the cautionary tale, interrupting, how much autonomy you give everybody versus can I tell the story at an enterprise level? that becomes a little bit of the challenge there, where that's the encouragement of getting with a solution partner and then reusing workflows, issue types, and leverage those all the way through the organization so that it tells a very similar story. Both the beautiful thing and the good news and the bad news that I have to say about Jira Service Desk is it's highly configurable. But getting to that enterprise level also means you just have to start putting some controls in place and some steering to keep those things simple and measurable.
Cool. Hey, Jeff, Hemant has a question about HR and Jira
Sure.
Service Desk. And how do you get customer or specific, like either employee information where only HR people can see that information, not everybody else?
Sure, just depending on your deployment, but whether if it's, as long as it's its own separate project and you start setting up certain roles and groups for certain permissions into that project, and that's something we can have a breakout. The short answer to your question is yes, can be done, but just it sounds like you need logical and physical segregation of certain data points, like salary information, that kind of thing. We can lock certain security down at the field level and teach you how to enable that and get through that use case. But short answer, yes. Long answer is I need a little more info, but yeah, very capable, and we've done it in the past.
Great. And I know the answer wasn't directed to ServiceNow, but for anybody interested, I think the best way to say with ServiceNow is because it's a HR-specific purpose-built module, they have their own tables and everything already segregated out with extremely strict security controls that they actually redeveloped and created specifically to handle HR and PII data and things like that to make sure they were GDPR and all sorts of different levels of compliance with all that kind of information. So that stuff is definitely there in ServiceNow. Again, very purpose-built. So yes, you can configure it, but they're also very specific to those different departments within your industry already. Beyond that, workflows and automation, I could talk all day about this. Unfortunately, 90% of it would get extremely technical just because that's the kind of person that I am. But this is a core premise of ServiceNow when you talk about what ServiceNow offers, the workflows, the automation, the capability of having things that happen either automatically or tasks created for people, et cetera. It's all there for you. There are no code, low code, or the option to code your heart's content. All those options are there and capabilities so you can mix and match whatever workflow it is that you need to. And again, I could talk to you about this all day long, but suffice to say, if you want to be able to build a powerful workflow, ServiceNow can definitely handle anything you want to do.
Yeah, this is one where we spend a lot of time with customers on teaching what's possible with workflows. Of course, you know, the statuses and the transitions are all pretty standard. Where do you want this thing to have the ability to go? But where we really talk about and spend a lot of time is how do you enforce a workflow, and then how do you automate a workflow? So the enforcements of managing those behaviors, it can't go to certain statuses unless there's certain conditions that apply and data points there. And again, whether it's a condition or a validation point, or it's something that you want to automate in certain cases, you can pick an actor of someone who has authority to auto approve certain things in certain cases. So similar story, sky's the limit, but where this one gets underutilized is in the ability to build out enforcements and automations within your workflow.
Question for you, something that I actually don't know about that real quick. Can a workflow in Jira affect a different record for a different team?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I just wasn't sure. I'll have to learn about that.
You pick a triggering event, and based on that triggering event, you can get it to talk to anything.
Okay, very cool. Good to know. All right, licensing. It's difficult to answer licensing questions with ServiceNow. As we talked about, they are enterprise level, and that's what they're focused on. As a result, they are definitely one of the companies where they work with each individual customer to find the licensing that best suits both the customer and themselves, right? They have some different licensing methods that are enterprise-wide, meaning it's based on the number of employees the company has, and that's it. They don't care how many people are actually using the tool. That comes down, especially when you're using something like HR. They have others that are per user per month. They have some that are per physical device per month if you're doing discovery, orchestration, things like that. So it can definitely differ based on that. And even if I knew specific numbers about things, I'd probably get in trouble with ServiceNow if I even talked about them, but I actually don't, simply because it's different for almost every customer that you're dealing with. So you're definitely in that, once you hit in ServiceNow, you're in that area of, you're going to have negotiations, you're going to talk to them, you're going to deal with the sales reps, you're going to deal with all that kind of stuff. It's not just a click and sign up, put in your credit card and go.
Yeah, and Garrett, I have a question on that one. So so apart from like geography and industry and company size, which there may be some pricing differences on that per user, is there something, or maybe I heard somewhere, I read somewhere, that like the number of like agents or versus requesters versus like collaborators, like the number of people who fit those different types of roles in an ITSM, I think I saw like 4 or 5 of them even further defined, who could have a role on advancing or working a ticket or an issue. Is there pricing based off of the number of people in those different seats of roles as well?
Yes. So you're once, and again, I say yes, but it depends, right? It depends on the company and when they sign their license agreement and everything with ServiceNow, especially with the CEO changes and everything. But yes, typically we do talk about the difference between fulfillers and approvals versus end users, and the number of people that are, say, in dealing with incidents and problems and are fulfillers for those. So working those tickets, working to solve those tickets, those people will have a different cost than people that are just, say, approving a request, and they'll have a different cost from, say, HR agents that are working to onboard people and solve, leaves cases and things like that.
Yeah, it makes it so for folks who really, where cost is the number one thing, where these two tools can fit within the Venn diagram, whatever its size of company that is or whatever. I can see how frustrating it is to try to compare them.
Yeah, and so one of the things too, just of note when it comes to licensing, it's all based on your count. So again, land and expand. If you want to start with a single team, 5 team, or you're a smaller company, and that's again why it was designed the way it was. But then if you bolt an add-on, it's going to be based on your agent count, or really your user tier if you also have Jira software. And then, but one feature that we find that really stands out when organizations are comparing is that to be an approver, or be a service desk customer, you don't have to have a license, of course, as a customer, but even if you're only a customer as well as an approver, you don't need to have a special Jira Service Desk license. You're not going to consume a license as an approver, which is a very popular use case and one that we get asked about a lot.
Administration in ServiceNow is definitely something you can have. You can create so many different roles that the term administration is something we should define a little bit. But suffice to say that per module, you can have, say, a change admin, you could have an incident admin, you can have a problem admin, a knowledge admin, and you can give people in those different roles elevated access to do certain things within those modules, and you determine what those certain things are. If we're talking about actually administering the entire platform, or say developing it, and you're going to need to write some script to do this, or you're putting together an integration, at that point, then you're talking about actually having somebody that with the admin level, they're going to work in a development environment, push their code up to production. There's plenty of partners like ourselves that can help you out on a regular and ongoing basis, but that kind of stuff is going to require some amount of specialized training to understand how to tackle things within ServiceNow. But otherwise, you can easily have something that's a user admin, a group admin, that can easily help take care of things on their own without really any significant training. Maybe they go to a one-day class or a train the trainer class to help them understand how to do things.
Yep. Similar story. One of the most useful features though is the project level administrator, where they do have a certain amount of permissions just for their certain projects, so that your site administrators can focus on environmental things or architectural things, or expanding into the organization and training up those project level administrators for what I call really filter based types of features that are it's a set of if-thens, right? The SLAs, or the how do you want to enforce this version of the workflow that you have, and how do you want to organize your queues, because all those things that end up being very team specific, the project level administrator has a handful of features available to them so they can ultimately self-serve. Getting to a problem, really easy to dig into the error logs or do an evaluation of why something may not be doing what you think it's supposed to be doing. Generally, it lands on either a configuration problem or really a permissions problem, but troubleshooting that and getting to that data is really, really simple in the Atlassian stack. And then really, one of the notes here is if you are on server or data center, when you get into add-ons, this is something to keep in mind, is that your add-on versions, and this is where we can provide guidance as well, but when you get an add-on, keeping that in sync with the latest version that you also have, that's one of the only places where we see quote-unquote Jira break or be cumbersome from an administration perspective is you've let the add-ons get a little stale versus cloud where all those updates happen in real time with the new features and of course ensuring compatibility with the add-ons as you scale your solution with those add-ons and plugins.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you. So I have some fun visualizations. So where we picked superheroes here or popular culture heroes of where Jira Service Desk and ServiceNow may fit within these type of things, whether you're Iron Man, Superman, or Bumblebee. Jira Service Desk from our side, a little bit more of a transformer, right, and modular. ServiceNow, a little bit more of a get it all at once, Iron Man, modular kind of thing. So we're trying to play around with where these things fit strategically. This may or may not be helpful to you, but you guys can unmute and add any additional commentary. We can do a little Q&A now. I even had tried to do some comparisons with cars. I don't even know if this is effective at all as to where Jira Service Desk and ServiceNow fit. But hey, so Garrett, I wanted to do a sanity check on this, okay?
Okay.
So I'm trying to figure out here, and this is for everybody, nobody take a snapshot of this thinking it's dogma. But where the ServiceNow ITSM suite fits, if you were to make a somewhat equivalent of trying to bolt on the core products of Atlassian to equal the capabilities of ServiceNow, and maybe no one here is able to do it, but it may or may not involve Jira Service Desk for your service portal and your agent queues and your workflows, right? Confluence as your integrated knowledge base, and Ops Genie as your incident management and your monitoring and alerting tool, and Status Page as a tool to do customer and stakeholder real-time updates. So if my guess or my understanding in comparing these tools as to where if you wanted to match the capabilities, and this is independent of configuration capabilities and a lot of the additional bells and whistles you talked about, Garrett, you'd have to likely invest in those 4 tools. Obviously, they integrate seamlessly together to equal the ServiceNow ITSM suite. Where things got a little foggy with me is the operations management suite on the bottom. And I know from our side, okay, Device 42 and Insight are established CMDB and asset discovery or asset management tools. Again, we're going to work on a long-lived asset that helps kind of clear the fog of things. I thought this might be helpful for folks. And again, anybody can unmute right now and we'll start talking. And it's really, a Q&A session right now. But before we do that, before people drop off, just know that, we're available. You can always contact us here, each of our companies, Finite Partners and Trundl. So thank you to both of you guys. It's not over. We're going to do Q&A now, but I want to make sure you all know where you can get help. Check us out, email us, whatever you need. First off, are there any critical Q&As that people want to ask if they have to go? I haven't the foggiest idea of what time it is right now because I can't see the clock, so I don't know if we need to run or we're well over. But does anybody have any questions they want to bring up verbally? Hemant, did we answer your questions in general, and you were active on that end? We appreciate the questions you asked.
Yeah, I think you guys did a fine job a great job of putting this content together. It definitely resonates with what our observations have been vis-a-vis these 2 systems. I do feel we are at a stage where we are looking at going a level deeper into the implementation model, and some of the questions are coming from there. So thank you for answering those. Yes. I may follow up with, maybe I may follow up on that HR question a little bit more offline if you have time. That would be good.
Of course. That's what we're here.
No problem. And I will throw out there, Herman, that it sounds like you already know this about ServiceNow, or that you're not looking at ServiceNow, but just so you do know, ServiceNow, you can lock it down so that the HR data cannot be seen by even the system-wide admin. That is something that I've done with a very large entertainment company, and it's very common that is something that's possible.
Yeah,
So,
and that's the thing I'm trying to figure out sort of how to do with the service desk also.
yeah.
That's my question.
Any other questions out there? Rashi, Michael, Marcus, Jen, Ravi, Sanford, Thomas?
I'm all set, guys. This is Rashi. Thank you very much. This was very helpful.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So yeah, thank you, Michael. So I guess, well, as folks want to drop off, they can. Garrett, do you have any commentary? Does this sound about right, sort of, from your side?
I think it's closer. I think the one thing that I would throw out there is that the CMDB, that the place to store all the information about the CIs, and even the ability to say link up and pull information in from SCCM, and to pull information in from what do you call it, your Active Directory and all that different kind of stuff, that is all going to be possible in the ITSM suite. So that part of the CMDB and asset is going to be there. But like you said, the discovery, the orchestration, the service mapping, all of that is going to be reserved for ITOM.
So that's very helpful. And I think I have an incentive to make a sort of master grid of just that level of deep, of capabilities across the grid, to say whether it's a matter that it's native, whether it's a matter of configuration, whether it's a matter of adding an add-on. And I have every incentive to kind of figure that one out. So this is very helpful and really cool. So it was my attempt to try to give people a perspective on what it takes on the Atlassian side to make an equivalent of ServiceNow for what we can say like for like are. And there's some overlap there, and it's hard to match.
Yeah, makes sense though. That's very neat to see.
Okay, cool. All right, guys. So hey, this was recorded. We actually have a previous one that was also recorded. I'll make these available to all of you, and then I will email everybody on this when we make the long-lived asset or case, or just basically a written version of what this webinar series is about, because I think the industry kind of would welcome it. And again, Garrett and Jeff, thank you. And these guys are available for everybody's attended. So you treat us as a peer, and reach out if you have questions or need help on things. It's not always about transactions. So thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Definitely.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Bye.
All right.